This week on What's Your Ism, our guest is Clifton D'Rozario, Central Committee member and Karnataka State Secretary of CPIML Liberation, Vice President of All India Central Council of Trade Unions, and General Secretary of All India Lawyers Association for Justice. He's also a grassroots activist. Clifton works with the Manthan Law Collective in Bengaluru and has spent years fighting alongside sanitation workers, displaced communities, and others pushed to the margins. From the Narmada movement to the courts, Clifton talks about using the law as a tool for resistance and why ideology still matters in everyday struggles.
Ambedkarism, Marxism, liberalism, Dravidianism, feminism, Gandhiism. What role are these great big isms of the 20th century playing in the 21st century? What relevance do they have today?
I have a tree.
I'm an atheist in the same way as I'm an leprechaun.
Why have there been casteism existing in the country still today?
Feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal
So the
rights.
nature of the system is to be as mean and rotten as you can, to try to maximize profit.
I'm Sudipto Mondal, and welcome to this episode of What's Your Ism? Hello and welcome to What's Your Ism. This is again a very special episode for me. It's close to my heart because I'm dealing with somebody who I have known for, I suppose, 2 decades now. You've heard the formal part of his introduction, but to me, he's Karnataka's, Bangalore's, and the CPIML's football playing revolutionary. Welcome to What's Your Ism. Thank you so much for doing this and for allowing us to shoot inside your office. So I have a question to open with, but before that, just take us through your office. Show us this beautiful iconography. Who do we have here?
This is the Manthan Law Office. This is our litigating office.
Right.
And all people who have inspired us, I guess, in everything that we do. In fact, the office, whatever we do, even in terms of litigation, we call this a political litigation of the law. In the sense that something that you're not going to fight for on the streets,
Right.
you're not going to argue for in the courts. So that's the kind of practice that we try to build up. So each of them, Savitribai Phule, Fatima Sheikh, Lenin, we all people, Babasaheb Ambedkar, Ghassan Kanafani.
Ghassan Kanafani, who's that?
He's the Palestinian revolutionary.
Okay.
I think one of our, a lot of us who grew up in the 80s,
Right.
know about the kind of special ties that Palestine always had with India and the kind of support that India always had for the Palestinian cause. He's somebody who comes from a Marxist-Leninist kind of background, tried to fight for Palestine's liberation under that kind of under his party, and he was, of course, murdered along with his niece. But he's somebody who's been a big inspiration for many of us. Charu Majumdar, of course.
Saru Majumdar. There's a nice sketch of Saru Majumdar. Yeah. Come.
So that's Manthan Law.
Okay.
And this
That's Manthan Law and this is the party office.
This is the party office.
Okay.
This is a party office, also doubles as our trade union office, also student organization office.
Until we are in this section, it is quite safe. Right? Now, this is the section, I think, which is where it gets
Safer.
a little complicated, you think? No? Safer?
I don't think so. I was just thinking, I was just reading the other day, it went back rather to Ambedkar's Buddha or Karl Marx. I find that a very interesting kind of an essay. I also find it very interesting in how people read that essay. There is one set of people who will try to say that this is an article that Babasaheb wrote to denounce Marxism. But there's an entire section that will say that, basically what he's saying is that the end goals are the same. It's just the paths that will differ. And he had a very serious problem with the paths. So I think the end goals of what all of us have is flown from these minds. The kind
These
of
minds, and some of these minds were not limited to just being minds, particularly in the case of these two characters. And if you'll allow me to kind of, I'm going to try to frame this question, in a way which is not disrespectful to their contribution. But if you look at Mao and Stalin, right, it's one of those very fraught discussions. And the reason I say it's fraught is not because there are some people who have not read ABCD who are talking about it. Your former Politburo member, Avita Krishnan, I was just listening to her interview on the way here in preparation for this interview. What she said is, in the the 200-year celebration of Marx and also the November Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution. On that occasion, Dipankar, I believe, made a very strong statement over there, distancing the party from the legacy of certain excesses that might have been committed in the context of China or in USSR. And Kavita's point, I said, well, okay, yeah, so that's an acknowledgement. She's like, no, this not an acknowledgement is not enough, and we must talk more about what actually happened under Stalinist Russia, under Mao, given that these are movements which, in a sense, came as a, kind of a proletarian, upsurge. We talk about peasants and all that. What happened to peasants under their regimes?
No, I mean, see, again, that's really a debate in itself or a conversation in itself. I don't think that there's any escaping that there may have been excesses that happened at that point, and the party has always been very blunt to acknowledge it. I think, at least from my point of view, you learn from history. You don't remain a slave to history, and there are definitely things that could have been done much better, or maybe differently than it was done at that point in time, and we learn from that. But the point is also, if you look at, say, from Stalin's point of view, ultimately to stand up at that time to Hitler and finally bring him to his knees, I mean, that entire contribution of Russia is something that you cannot overlook. You look at Mao, of course, you can say so many things about it, but the fact that in a kind of backward capitalist kind of a country like it was, to show that there is a path for revolution possible. And I think that's something that, so we can have views on this. We can also say things could have been done differently. Some things, maybe something should not have been done. That's fine, and I think one can acknowledge that. But to say that one has to denounce, that is something that I find difficult. There's a very interesting book, Why Marx Was Right. And I'm not saying because it has Marx in its title, Terry Eagleton. But he says this very nice thing in his introduction. He says, you ask anyone about a Marxist, he says this, about what is the one thing that you find wrong or flawed, and they'll probably scratch their heads and they may not be able to do it. Now that's bhakti. I think that general problem exists for any kind of a giant on whose shoulders any of us wants to stand, to be able to point out that, okay, there are certain problems, there were certain mistakes that were made, and that's about everyone. I think it's about any leader that you have. But I think as far as we are concerned as a party, at least, which is why I really I respect the line that the party takes. These are things that that we've spoken about, we've written about. Our stated positions are out there, so it's not just some kind of debate.
So this is that controlled environment discussion, Clifton. We kind of spoke in passing about why CPIML. Good time to get into that discussion. All ears. Why not CPI? Why not CPIM? Why? And besides, I mean, you don't need to answer this, I suppose, but nevertheless, I have to bring it up. I mean, if ML, then why not people out in the
forest? Yeah, I think over a period of time, I mean, also given the kind of political work that I've done, been part of movements, the entire phase, where a lot of young people, wanted to go and be part of movements that were happening in the central, Narmada Bachao Andolan, MKSS, so on and so forth. So having done all that, and like I was saying, given the kind of situation, the political situation in the country, and I feel, I mean, I felt at that time and feel it even more now, to be part of an organization which has a well-rounded understanding of how things are in this country, politically and ideologically, and as a program that may not, materialize, you may not realize that immediately, but as a program that actually pushes for the emancipation of, all the entire working class, all oppressed sections in the country. And I believe that this party, given the kind of the ideological turn that it took and how it formed, and the path it took, because I mean, when you asked me the time why, I did a lot of reading at that time, and there's this.
And that time, let's clarify,
This is
2013,
between 2010, after 2010.
when this rebranding of Modi started happening?
Yeah, around that time. So before that, I mean, I knew the party. Like Kavita Krishnan is a very old friend of mine. You know,
An influential speaker, thinker.
we were kind of when I was in Narmada Bacha Andolan, she was in JNU, and we used to keep having these protests in Delhi, where all these ISA students used to come and support in a very big way, and she was one of them. So I know from then. I'm saying 99 onwards. That's from then. So I knew the party.
Kavita was in ISA.
She was an ISA then. She was ISA party, and so I mean I knew the party, but then I did. So I tried to find out more, read more. There's a very interesting kind of book, The Flaming Fields of Bihar, of Bhojpur, which talks about how the party kind of reconstructed itself in Bihar. 72 is when Charu is martyred, and the kind of repression that takes place at that time across the country. Thousands of Naxalites are martyred at that time, and the organization is in complete disarray. So there's a reorganizing that takes place, and the party is reconstructed.
And this is the time when Siddhartha Shankar Ray is I mean, like, for the benefit of...
Yeah, I mean, that's a time when you have a united front government in West Bengal with the CPM over there, and the kind of animosity with which they dealt with the Naxalites.
The CPM had just replaced the previous Congress government led by Siddhartha Shankar Ray, and Jyoti Basu.
Yes. So
came to power, yeah.
So at that point, the party kind of, this new central committee was formed with Vinod Mishra, Jawar, and our comrade Shambhuji. Shambhuji is still alive, and the party then was rebuilt in Bihar, and it's a very amazing manner in which it kind of went about its work. So for instance, one of the things, this entire thing of you ask why not the Maoists. So in your mind, it's always there. These elections, it should be boycotted, so on and so forth. The party over there, one of the main struggles that it took up there in the beginning was of dignity, and part of the dignity question was the right to vote. So you had the right to vote.
Expand.
So in Bihar at that point...
we have to talk about what's happening in Bihar, this entire Bhumihar, Ranveer Sena, this assertion is happening also.
This is much later. I'm talking
in
70s,
response to
80s,
the mobilization.
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So over there, Dalits were not allowed to vote. Not just Dalits, all oppressed sections were not allowed to vote as per their choice. You were told whether you could vote or not, and you were told who to vote for or not. And that's how it was. So one of the first testers, Jagdish Master, 1970, who said that we need to have the right to vote. So the struggle around to vote, then the struggle for dignity, wages, land, so all of these things, that's how the party built over there. And the party did not stay static. It had an underground. It was underground at that time, squads, all of those things. But the party, there was an entire reconstruction phase where it went through, and said that, see, we need to think. We can't only stick to this one. So mass organizations were formed, and finally the party came out into the open and fought elections. We still continue to fight elections. But even elections is not seen as an end in itself. It's a decision that's made at this point in time. It's something that you're doing. But the point is that the program that the party had, which I read, that's what attracted me the most, and which is why I felt, and I'd been seeing the kind of positions that the party was taking on various issues at that point. It was most logical that this was where I should be.
And you saw that there was an evolution from the CPI to the CPM to the CPIML, right? This evolution of the line.
Yes.
Right.
Without falling into the trap of this kind of saying only armed revolution is going to bring about change. That's a trap that the organization didn't get into. The other thing also, is I've been in many organizations. I think democratic functioning is very, very important in how, and I find at least our party extremely democratic organization in terms of how it deals with people's opinions, differences, so on and so forth. And I think that's a very important attribute for for a party, and one hears this all this time. Oh, you're in a Marxist, Communist Party, Stalinist, and that this. Yeah, but far from that. Far from that. In my opinion, the kind of centralism that I've seen in so many organizations, that's really quite worrisome. Here, that just does not exist.
Entry into activism again for you happened very early. You started work after you finished engineering. You started working as an architect for slum projects. What exactly was it? Yeah, tell me about that.
No, I used to do a lot of theatre in college when I was doing my engineering. I did my engineering from Ramaya, I was a civil engineer before. And we used to do street plays at that time. So basically, I remember we did the street play on Bavari Devi, those kinds of social issues.
Which college is this?
Ramaya, MS Ramaya. It was a rowdy college then, not what it is today. I think in terms of, at the end of that, very interestingly, Arvind's house, I'm not sure if you know this now, which is now ALF. That's where Arvind used to live. And there's a bunch of street kids that got in touch, stumbled upon him. They wanted to, one night they wanted to sleep and they came and asked him, and he said, okay, you can sleep on a terrace. So a bunch of some 12, 15 kids. And what started one evening, they started coming every day. So then Arvind, Sanjay Bhavikatte and myself, we said, okay, I've just finished my engineering. I was a research associate in this Institute of Science in the civil engineering department. So every day we end up being with these kids. What started off just as some kind of interaction then became like this full-on kind of commitment that we made to this bunch of kids. And these kids were begging, they were rag picking, they were all on solution that EraseX.
EraseX, yeah.
So they were all hooked on to that small. The youngest guy was Irshad at that time. Irshad was around 6 years old. And the oldest was the Don, I forget his name now. Khadar or something. He used to be maybe around 14. But the real cool kid was Salim Cheda. He was in this group. So this, and Narayana. Narayana was the second youngest kid. So this entire bunch of kids. And we were there every day. Then there were so many people who came in Bindu. Loads of people. Then we gave it a name. Street Children's Initiative on Society. There was this RBNMS ground, which is now a football field. There used to be these old kind of warehouses over there. Yeah. One of those warehouses was converted into a night shelter for street children. It became then a full-time shelter for street children. We took all these kids and we were there with those kids, teaching them, trying to get them off begging and all of those things. And over a period of time, then it kind of evolved. Some of them went back to their houses. We managed to get some of them into these full-time shelters, and that thing came to an end. But that was, I think, quite a remarkable kind of experience for all of us,
First social intervention, you think? Major? I mean, of course, I'm sure you would have done some, human service and things like that. But this struck, like something with organized.
In terms of organizing, this would have been really one of the first things that we did. It's thereafter that, I was continuing with the Indian Institute of Science, and then I quit that job. It was just, central government, you work 5 days a week. There's not much work happening, but you're getting good wages. Really, I think too much energy at that time to accept that. So I was with this organization called Avas, which were building houses in the slums. So Vayali Kaval, there's that house next to Chodaya Hall. There's an entire 2 rows of houses, slums.
Those are slums, yeah.
I was the engineer when those slums were being built. So there were like a few things like that.
What went into the engineering, you think?
Sorry?
What went into the engineering? I mean, when you're thinking about...
No, like designing. Like for instance, so this entire thing, you have to design from the basement up to one is the entire structure. But because it was such small amount of land, we wanted to come up with this notion of common walls, because if you have then common walls, then you will gain at least 6 inches within the house, 12 inches, 1 foot more. If your house is say 10 feet by 9 feet, every inch counts. Yeah, so all of those things, and sitting with them, designing it, then getting the material, supervising the construction. I mean, I was like an engineer. So what is the mix for concrete? What is the mix for mortar? What is the kind of bricks you should get? What are the kind of pipes? All of that. So that was an interesting kind of job that we did. Also because I remember one particular slum, there was an entire real estate mafia that was behind that land, this Chaudhaya land. You can imagine it's worth crores even at that time. And so you used to have these goons keep coming, we'll be doing the construction and they'll come, 30, 40 of them, threatening. And all the people just get together. So no one's going to come and touch one brick over here and ensure. So they're all construction. So they all build their own houses and all the time fighting these guys who would come to try and threaten them. And that happened. You see it. It's quite a teaching experience, in terms of once people kind of decide that, okay, I'm going to take any more being knocked down, then it's a real threat to that entire thing. So that was
I'm just imagining that area also, Clifton. I mean, if you think of it, I was just thinking, okay, well, if from that point, from Chaudhaya Memorial, if you send a drone up, what are you looking at? You're looking at perhaps this, definitely at the right 90 degrees below is this area you speak of. But you look a little left and right, you're looking at some of the most elite areas of Bangalore.
Elite, upper caste.
Malleshwaram, Upper Palace Orchards. Yeah.
So quite remarkable actually for those people.
And then you pack off to Narmada, is it? Is that?
Yeah, so at that time, I mean, the entire thing, see, urban poverty was not something I needed to see in a slum. It was a lived reality as far as, many of us were concerned. So how do you really tackle this? And I think, this entire thing of displacement, kind of, at least those were some of the connections that I started to see, that people living in the city already, things are so bad. And then you have these various kinds of, pushes that are driving people to the cities. And there's this one particular movement that's going on that's trying to fight that. That's how I had understood the Narmada Vacha Andolan. So initially it was just like, let's just go and see what's happening. This was maybe 98, around 98, 99. And there was, at that time still, there was used to have something called the Narmada Solidarity Forum in Bangalore. Bunch of students, professors, etc., who had gone and seen Narmada, and so they've come back and decided whenever the movement needs some kind of support.
Who are these professors? Anybody you can think from the top of your mind?
Generally, some NGO people were there, some DU people, Bangalore University people were there. The usual, I mean, it's Ramdas Rao, Rajendra, Babaya,
Nagari Babaya.
Then all of us, we were there as the young people who are suddenly come into these spaces. Hassan Mansoor used to be there.
Hassan Mansoor, right?
Professor Hassan Mansoor, a remarkable man. So we were kind of part of that. We used to go to colleges and tell them, okay, there's this dam being built in Gujarat and it's displacing so many people, So we have to be in support of them. And also, the entire thing, conservation, forest, electricity consumption. So I just went there and I think was just, I went there, I think for the first time was probably for a week. It was a bunch of students and Benson Isaac, all of us had gone together, Sana, some other group basically. And I think at the end
many of these names might not make sense and you might wonder, why should I know these names? Because I hope that someday somebody will discover 5 minutes of this and know that somebody like Benson existed. Somebody like an Nagari Babaya existed. We might not be able to exhaustively speak about them, but it's important to take these names and for you to Google these names perhaps even,
And see, I think in the Bangalore context, a lot of these people really, at some point, and they really try to do something, some kind of activism. But for me, I think I by the end of the first week, I decided that I'll come back here. I think what really...
Come again? What is it?
By the time we were leaving from there, I decided that I'm going to come back. I'm going to work in this movement. But really what happened was we left that night. So basically we were in this village called Domkedi, which is in Maharashtra. So you cross the Narmada to Gujarat. This place called Hapeshwar. And from Hapeshwar, you have to walk around 11 kilometers to a place called Kawat. And from there, you take a bus to Baroda, and from there you take a train back to Bangalore. That's the route. So we got delayed, and by the time we reached Hapeshwar, it was already becoming dark. And these are places no electricity. I mean, it's in the middle of the forest.
Milo andhera hai.
So then we went walking. We reached this kavat, and so we're waiting there. And she said, "There's no bus. So whenever a bus comes, it comes in the night, comes in the night, comes in the morning, it comes in the morning." And there were many people with us, maybe around 30 of us, because lots of people were coming and going at that time. And suddenly the cops came, Bapre, the Gujarat police, and started abusing, pushing people, pulling us by our hair, arrested everyone, and took us to the police station. This is like maybe 11th, by now it's 11:30, 12 in the night. So we reached the police station, and everyone's names they take, and we give everyone's names, and we realized that one person was missing. From one of the students who had come with us from Karnataka, he was missing. So now we have to go back. This is now already it's past midnight.
And no mobile phones back then.
Nothing. This is 99, 98. No, nothing. So now who's going to go back? You're sitting in the police station. They've abused you. They've shoved you around. So then finally Sana and me decide, chalo hum log jayenge. Both of us will go. So then there's three police jeeps. Two of us are sitting in this. These guys continue to abuse us. So we come back. And we've gone some 20 kilometers away. So from there we come back to this place. And we're looking for this guy with some flashlights in our hand. And the entire time I was thinking, like, what the hell is going to happen? What are they going to do? Anything can happen. They can trash you. They can do anything. I mean, your mind goes into thousands of directions at that point. Anyway, we came back and then called out. This guy was hiding on top of the bus stand. He got scared. So okay, we found him. I was just really, okay, we got him back. We took him back, but on the way back, that's when I think for me, this is nonsense. You're supposedly in a democracy. People have the right to protest. People have the right to stand up for what they believe in. And this is also some non-violent movement. This is not even like, some Naxalite movement is going on. There were no Maoists at that time. At that time, it was, you had the PWG, you had the MCC, and various versions of it. As in the armed kind of stuff. Of course, groups like CPIML also at that time were underground. But this was a pure, Sida Sada, matlab, democratic kind of a struggle, non-violent struggle, Adivasi struggle. And this is what you're doing to this. So kind of, I think, riled me no end. And that's when, for me, okay, it'll be good to come back and spend some time here. So I came back to Bangalore, just quit and went back in a week. Was there for a few years.
What did mom say?
I think my mom was very heartbroken actually. I was the first engineer in our family. Anglo-Indian engineer from Austin Town. I don't think you hear about too many of that. And I think our dream was, that you do something, at least, you build some comfortable life for yourself. I don't think it was about her. It was only about what's going to happen to me. She was more concerned about that. So it was terrible also. I remember I went back to Narmada, and it must have been in the middle of the year. Must have been around April, I think I went back, April. And till the end of the year, I was only in the Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh Adivasi areas. So this is like you're completely in the forest. So if I'm in one village and I walk to another village, which says 5 hours, deeper into the forest, there's no way anyone can reach me unless they come or somebody's coming from there and they send a message. That's the only way. And so we were all in different villages doing different kinds of work. In between, we got arrested. We were in Dhule jail for a couple of weeks. All of this has happened. And then finally in December, I took time off and I went to Badwani, which is in Madhya Pradesh, the plains area, where we have an office. There's an office phone and all over there. That's when I didn't got back in touch with my mom. And poor thing, I really feel bad for the kind of difficulties that I put her through in all of these times. But she's somebody who's always understood, I think, somewhere that I'll end up
She played a role in you becoming this person also, perhaps.
Yeah, even when I became a lawyer, my mom be okay, now at least you're going to become a successful lawyer. I'm like, no, I'm going to be doing these cases. So, okay, fine.
I'm going to have an office in Shivaji Nagar. Yeah, as opposed to, where are the lawyer offices generally? The big lawyers?
Infantry Road has quite a few.
Cunningham Road.
Nagar. Cunningham Road now is for if you want a big office, 50,000-60,000 rent, that kind of a thing. Yeah, so that was Narmada. Narmada was, like I've always said, it's like a university for me.
Yeah. I've written that down because you'd say this sometime long ago, saying my first college was, or school was.
And I think like Loharia, Loharia Shankariya, he just passed away last week. He's from this village called Jalsindi. I mean, there's such knowledgeable people. This entire notion, that if you're educated, you're educated. This kind of debunked, for me. You're in these villages, like you're walking from one village to another. I remember Lohar and me once, some 7 hours you have to walk between these two villages, and both of us, we started early morning, and we'll be walking through the forest. There's nothing. We only have this one. It's called a kurad. It's like a huge kind of axe.
Like a site.
Yeah, like a scythe. But that's the only defense you have. Like there are a lot of wild animals. So you just kurads on your shoulder, tuck, 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 you're walking. And through the entire time, he's telling me about, there's this song called the Gayana. So it's basically the song of evolution, according to the Bilalas, the community that he belonged to, which talks about how the earth was formed. And so he'll say, okay, this is what some Dev, Dani, some gods, something and all. It's a very different worldview. It's something very difficult to use a metaphysical. You can use all of this phrase, but it is a worldview. It's a real worldview. It matters most to them. So you listen to all of this, and the entire thing of his knowledge of herbs. He could tell you which plant can be used for what. I remember toe was cut to something like that. Walking, he went, brought one thing, brought another thing, crushed it, ground it in one stone, took the juice and put it on my thing. I said, okay, now you'll be fine. So it's very different, I think. And for me, these are the people who really, I really love, in a very big way. They've helped me understand, shape politically. Quite.
How long did you continue to go there, and when did you stop going, and why?
I was there as a full-time activist till around 2003, and then continued to go there between 6 to 8 months a year up to 2008. That's when I started my practice, and then after that, it's just I go once in a while, just as a visit.
If you get a chance, you go even now.
Yeah. Even now, I'm in touch with so many people. They'll keep calling. I'll keep calling them. So we're in touch with a lot of the activists. They're kids who I knew as like literally, children who born when I was in their house, kind of kids as well, are now in college. Some of them are studying law. So especially those who are studying law, all of them are in touch with me. So it's very lovely, that kind of a relationship.
Do you think at some point ideologically, because obviously that chapter ends, law becomes one of your central pillars in your life, ALF is happening, and then slowly 2014 CPIML. Help us through this journey, no? So you are part of what is for the lack of a better term, a conglomerate or federation of different broadly NGO kind of organizations in the NAPM or the that universe of.
These are not NGOs. These are all, NGO, the way we understand it, is a funded organization. These are not funded. So Narmada, for instance, how did we raise money? When I was in Narmada, we used to get a monthly allowance of 800 rupees. And that some supporter of ours...
Stipend, you mean? Party stipend kind of thing.
Bas, that's all. $800 a month is what we used to earn. Other than that, you have your offices and all of that. Now, the kind of expenses in Nimad, the plains in Madhya Pradesh where we used to do fund collection, it's very fertile. It's 193 villages that are being submerged, of which around, 50 odd villages are tribal villages, Adivasi villages. Rest are all caste Hindu villages with some amount of Dalit and some amount of Adivasi populations as well. Now those areas, they grow wheat. Wheat's a winter crop. So what we would do from Narmada, from the Andolan, is in Jan, we would go to all villages, to all our supporters and collect wheat. And people will contribute wheat, 1 quintal, or whatever, how much they can contribute. Substantial amount of wheat would be collected. And that wheat, then you'll sell it. Part of it will be used for as, running your office offences. Part of it will be kept so that when you have any protest, the wheat will be broken into small bits. And you make something called gata. It's basically boiled. That's it. And some pickle. So that's how that
like a
movement
porridge
has
kind of
survived.
thing.
So these are not NGOs, funded NGOs in that sense. These are movements that really, are surviving on people's
No, I didn't know this.
contributions.
I've never been to report on that thing, so I wouldn't know. But I was just taking like a long shot in terms of understanding how this transition happens from this world into a very structured, formal. The one beauty about the communist movement is the party structure, party line, these different um, co-working pieces, which the unions, different kinds of unions and all of that. So that transition is what I was curious about. Along that journey is also a very important pit stop, which is not even pit stop. It's like a pretty substantial part of your life, the ALF experience. What happens after this?
I think, see, for me, by this time, this is, around 2007, 2008, the country is already changing quite a bit. And I've also, arrived at my own political assessment of social movements, because these are all social movements, new social movements, where you're fighting against a dam somewhere, you're fighting, for tribal rights somewhere. And these issue-driven kind of movements, I felt that they were limited, because they don't address any of the structural issues, whether it's class, whether it's caste, patriarchy. To some extent, obviously it does, but no, it's not your agenda. If your agenda is to stop a dam, then that's your agenda. That's what really is your driving force. That's your everyday. In between, maybe some people may get empowered, but you're fighting caste or fighting class or ensuring gender equality is not part of your everyday program. Let me put it that way. The other thing, so that was for me a very troubling feature. The other was also in terms of how these movements are functioning. You were saying about the party. From the outside, you can say, oh, this is so structured, it's so top down, etc. But having experienced both, I have no doubt that the party is far more democratic than social movements that, which I've seen as well, because it becomes very individual driven, it becomes very individual centric. The main leader is the main focus. You don't have structures, you have no committees. You'll have some broad, maybe some committees here and there, but at the end of the day, it's a very the aura of the leader. That's what is the driving force of that organization. That's not the case for a communist party. So I think there were these differences that happened. Of course, there were also personal reasons. Things had taken a little bit of a bad turn at home. My mom had a heart attack, and so it was becoming too stressful for her. There was a lot of financial issues. So I had to come back. I had to earn. So ALF, I think, why I didn't start ALF. ALF started in 2000. I only joined them then. I think I realized by then that I may want to do law. There's this person called Colin Gonsalves.
This person? Who person?
Colin Gonsalves. He's
Of
a
course.
senior counsel.
No, I said,
Yeah.
meant
He's a
it
senior advocate in the
sarcastically.
Supreme
everybody
Court.
knows him,
Now,
yeah.
he's a very, I've known him for many years, for 25 years now. And I remember one day.
Everybody knows Colin. Colin doesn't know everybody.
So, the Narmada case was going on in the Supreme Court. And along with Shripad, Nandini, Rehmat, and Neda, I was part of the team that was working on all the Supreme Court cases. So, which is a lot of drafting. So, I really ended up doing quite a bit of legal kind of reading also at that time. So, Colin, I remember meeting once in the Supreme Court, and he's like, so you come for the Narmada case. He said, why don't you do law? It'll be really helpful for you. And somewhere I think that kind of stuck in my head, because when I came back to Bangalore, there was no chance of going back to building houses. I think I'd long gone past that. And I needed a livelihood as well. But also a livelihood where I wouldn't have to compromise on my politics. Because that was something that I was quite clear on. That, whatever it is I do in life, this is how it's going to be. So law was like the ideal possibility. And then I'd spoken to Arvind, I'd spoken to Lawrence and Rupa. And so he said, okay, ALF is a possibility if you want to join. So that's how, even Jaga joined ALF as well.
Beata and Jagdish.
And we were there. Yeah, initially, of course, I was just, I was not there.
He's the public prosecutor, by the way, in the Prajwal Revana case, which the News Minute has been following very closely. Anyway, Beata Jagdisha.
Yeah, so in the beginning when I joined ALF, which I think was 2004, I used to keep going back to Narmada, literally 6 months, 8 months. So that used to create a little bit of heartburn as well, So come and think, okay, if I'm here, I'll take a salary. If I'm not here, I won't take a salary, kind of a thing. But I think after I started practicing, then it's been ALF. ALF, I think, it's been a very important space in Bangalore in terms of the work that it's done, in terms of more than the work it's done, I feel more the space that it's provided for a lot of groups to come there, to utilize the space, to talk about their politics, that kind of a thing. But I think over a period of time, I kind of, this shift politically as well, something that was happening too rapidly for myself to be able to continue there. So I think at that point, then we decided that now is the time to leave. And that's when, Maitri, Raghupati and myself, that's when we kind of quit and we started our own practice. And obviously, all three of us joined the party. I started doing party work, union work, while earning our living from litigation.
And you named that firm Manthan Law.
That's a coincidence.
No, it's not a coincidence. No, I think it's a cipher. Tell me about this. How does this ML party start a law firm called ML?
Manthan, actually, Swati, we were together before. She used to work in an organization called Manthan. And she used to explain it in the most beautiful way, that Manthan basically is, you can understand Manthan in a religious way, Shiva churning
and all.
So, but she used to say, that this is the churning of the mind. That's the Manthan that all of us, it's also a very famous film. I think.
Manthan, yeah.
Smita Patil. So for her, I think she used to associate it with that. And I was totally captivated by the way she explained the word, and I felt that this churning of the mind it's a nice place to be. There's no stagnancy, you're continuously thinking about things that are happening. So that's how Manthan, and then lawyer's office, so Manthan Law. So it's just a coincidence.
What's the best joke you've heard on that?
The usual, like the ones you're trying to.
Anyway, Clifton, I want to talk about party stuff a little more, but I don't think anybody else. I can't think of anybody else to discuss the Anglo-Indian experience, Clifton. And this Anglo-Indian experience, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? And these are things that I've observed over the years. I've tried to do a little bit of reporting and all of that. Is a very, how do I put it, stateless experience. Like a lot of there's one impression that இவங்க English பேசுறாங்க, right? And I don't know if you remember in Johnson Market there was this gentleman who used to ask for alms in English. Do you remember? Do you know who I'm talking? Yeah, near that post office in Johnson Market. Good sir, do you have a rupee to spare or something? He would say. And for most Indians, English is like one. Oh, if you speak English, you're elite, right? So there's this image of the Anglo-Indian community. Oh, இவங்கள, this thing. But then. That term itself, which is used for the community, right? Dingo. Let's start from there, no?
Yeah, dingo was something I got called a lot in school. A couple of people used to do that. You know where it comes from, right?
Yeah.
Dingo
You talk about it. It's not my place to talk about it. You should talk about it.
It's a Australian wild dog. The joke that goes around it is that a lot of Anglo-Indians, including many people from my own family, they left in the 60s and 70s. It was like you really belong nowhere. For Anglo-Indians, I think that generation especially, which was born in British India, enjoyed a particular kind of a status in British India, and then in independent India, the way, you saw yourself over there. I think there's much that can be written about that. But that also meant a lot of people walked away, and they either went to Canada, many of them went to England, but a large number went to Australia. And so the joke was that, these the dingoes from Australia now. So that's See, the Anglo-Indians actually, I think I'm the most unqualified to talk about Anglo-Indians. I'm the most atypical Anglo-Indian.
No, but I'm saying the social history, the
That's
suffering.
what I'm saying. Like the kind of relationship, if you look at Anglo-Indian, generally Anglo, very close-knit as a community, So if you look at Australian Anglo-Indians, they are all like really very close, spend a lot of time together, that kind of thing. I was never part of them. All my friends were basically Tamilian background. We had our own adda. It was a completely different life that I had with them. But if you look at Anglo-Indians, it's interesting. I've always said this, that they're basically only there used to be only two classes of Anglos: the rich Anglos, the poor Anglos. The rich Anglos are those who live in Richmond Town, Shantinagar, Coxtown, Frasertown. They are very different. And then you have the poor Anglos.
Right in those areas, you do travel 500 meters, a kilometer, and you get into whatever, which is that place, at ITC colony,
Lingarajpuram,
Lingophonia, and all that is a different class of.
Completely different. And these don't meet. So Catholic Club is I think the defining feature. If you have membership in Catholic Club, you're one class of Anglo-Indian. If you don't have membership in Catholic Club, you're...
The others are going to St. Mary's Basilica, if I'm not wrong.
No, club.
The club, I understand, but even the church.
Church
is also Patrick's Church is also like
for the... So the class difference is very stark among Anglos, and at least from, the poor Anglos, educational opportunities, not being able to go through. Like I was the first engineer in my family. I'm still the only lawyer and engineer in my family. It was very difficult. A lot of, them dropped out of school, could not complete school. Or if they completed school, they couldn't complete college. So there's this typical kind of thing, the Anglo-Indians means, jovial, playing the guitar, drinking, dancing, that kind of a thing. So he's smiling.
People who have rice pancakes and coconut sauce.
Fun and frolic, yes.
Rice pancakes and coconut sauce being dosa and chutney.
Dosa and chutney. Or Mulligatawny soup.
Mm-hmm. Which is very famous in England, I hear.
Absolutely. There's a book
also. And all that.
There's a book that's Mulligatawny.
Yeah. Okay, by the way, Molaga-tanni, which is Molaga is...
pepper water. So the Anglo-Indian community, actually, if you look at it, the numbers are diminished in a very big way. And also the concentrated way in which they used to live is kind of changing now. It's also because a lot of intermarriages happened. The Anglo-Indian colonies per se. Austintown had a very big Anglo-Indian colony. Carlton Chapman,
the footballer,
Indian football team,
yeah.
Noel David, all of these Anglo-Indian boys. So we had but now a lot of them are sold. They've gone to different places. Things have changed quite dramatically. There's this one book that's come out recently. Barry O'Brien has written his book. He's the other O'Brien is his son, who's a TMC.
Derek O'Brien.
Bengali
Anglos.
Yes. His dad is Barry O'Brien, and an excellent man. I'd met him. He had basically, his book launch happened in Bangalore. And so one of my friends, Arundhati Ghosh, she was conducting that. So she called me and said that, it's an Anglo-Indian book that's being released. Why don't you come? So I went and met him. And Mr. Barry was saying, probably the two Anglo-Indians who he knows are in politics are his son and me. But the interesting thing is this, if you look at Anglo-Indians, even from our party, so I'm given to understand in the 70s, there was an Anglo-Indian who was part of the CPIML liberation in Karnataka when the party was underground. But there's not much that we know.
And I can see why, because see, the Anglo-Indian community, these are some things that are picked up along the way, and you said you're not the most qualified to talk about it, but I still want to bring it up. The railway Anglo, right? This is a working class Anglo who's hauling coal into a steam engine, who's probably hammering tracks into shape, who's doing all that kind of labor alongside people who in Indian political definitions, we may call them Dalit, Bahujan, minority kind of crowd. In that gangman, gangman, right? The railway gang will also have a guy who is this Anglo-Indian person. But so there's this class experience. But there's also another social experience, and tell me if I'm off mark over here, which is that of, on one side you have patriarchy, and you have patriarchs, claiming ownership of progeny, right? I am the dad of this thing. And then there are within patriarchy, you have dads who don't claim their fatherhood, right? And in the case of the Anglo community, we've heard so many stories about how women working in British officers, in that setup, were literally exploited, and children were born, and the officer packed off to England, and the mother and the child were left behind. How much of that do you see being acknowledged today? This difficult past.
It's a very forgotten history.
Forgotten
really,
history.
that's the thing. Is if you see the class of Anglos that I come from is the poor Anglo.
And I don't see it as a coincidence. Why should this poor Anglo class emerge? I would imagine some of it could do with abandonment. No,
it could be that. It also could be the kind of jobs. I mean, see, if you're from these areas, then the job you were probably doing is either you were working the railways or in the postal services, or like my uncle, he was the D grade job in excise department. That's the level that you are at. And obviously, as jobs have government jobs have diminished, and it's been a conscious decision. It obviously has hit even the Anglos as well. But the Anglos in these areas, firstly, the English you speak is not the English that you and me are speaking. It's a very different lingo that's spoken. And secondly, the kind of relationship that is built with the, like say for instance in my area, which is basically Anglos, Dalits, few OBCs, very hardly any upper caste would imagine in us, and Muslims. That's our area. The intermarrying between the Tamil Dalits and the Anglo Indians is my sister's best friend. She's married to a
explosive relationship. It really propels the family into another direction sometimes.
Yes. And so you'll have Tamil and English being spoken, and a mixture of Tamil. Like you don't play under the Pananmani veil. That kind of a thing will happen.
Do that again.
Yeah. So our area, so Anglos then have a very different kind of reality, and I think right now they're struggling through it. A lot of them are trying to make it. I'm seeing at least the next generation education is being taken very seriously. You have a lot of students now who are going to college, trying to complete college. So that I think that change has definitely happened. But that kind of a social kind of a search for what happened to this community, what's happening to this community, don't think that's happening much, except for this one book. I myself have not been able to stumble upon anything.
So somebody I knew was attempting to write a book on Anglo-Indian cuisine, and how the invention was a product of necessity, which is that there was so much scarcity that all these spare parts would get turned into fantastic dishes.
Liver curry.
And I've heard about some great stuff that gets cooked in your house.
My mom is, I think in my mom's family, in our entire family, my mom's the oldest surviving woman from that generation. And she still cooks an Anglo-Indian hand. So my cousins, anyone, whenever, like, okay, auntie, can we have the pepper water curry, or you want, say, beef cutlets or liver curry? She makes an excellent pork vindaloo. They'll just call my mom's most obliging on all of this.
Let's do this last segment on the party. We're a little out of time, Clifton. When I was speaking to Kavita, you brought her up, and I'm glad you did, because she talks about this very, very interesting journey, right? Which is that the revolutionary, perhaps finds their ism a little later, but the revolution happens somewhere in a very small way, much earlier on in life. And she used this term which I kind of wrote down. It says instinctive democratic humanism. Right? Instinctive democratic humanism, something that actually children don't have. They have to learn. They have to be taught. Right? I believe that children are not benign. They have perhaps the worst tendencies, and the humanity needs to be cultivated among children to raise them as human. If you'll agree, I don't know. But the reason I'm doing this is to take you back into your origin story. You went to a school which was very, how do I say,
elite.
Yes, that is what appears on the surface, but also run by some of the most progressive sections of the Christian clergy, which is the Jesuit priests. Right? You started, I think your primary school or your nursery was in Anthony's?
St. Anthony's, yeah.
Where Monica ma'am,
Sister Monica
was your principal.
She was the principal.
And then you went to St. Joseph's, where Dennis Coelho was, again, I was about to say Prime Minister. he was the principal of St. Joseph's European. So yes, of course, it's elite, but correct me if I'm wrong. There is, and I was speaking to Sharan, who's also your. Sharan is this journalist. We must read his work. He works with the print now. But he was saying that there was always this mix, and perhaps it's a result of that attempt to create that mix that people like you landed up over there, because you are not coming from some elite background. Even you come from
Ukadapalyam.
Ukadapalyam, right? I want to get into that space, but how do I start this? Okay, so I said I spoke to people who know this origin of yours. So Arvind was talking about this essay that you wrote in your third standard on Nelson Mandela. Let's start with that. That's a good starting point.
The poem, I think, was a result of the influence of my mother. I think my mom has been one of the biggest influences in my life in terms of values. How does one deal with difficulties, and to be dignified, despite whatever adversity. We came from quite a poor background. So she kind of introduced me to Nelson Mandela, and so it was a discussion with her. Then finally, this poem kind of came about. And you're right, even say St. Anthony's. See, that was not an easy school to be in. It was quite a lot of friends who were like seriously rich people. You'd come back from holidays, and I would have gone to Sarjapur to my my stepmom's village, and they would have gone to Switzerland, and I'm from there. Quite hilarious sometimes, thinking back. It does seem hilarious, but I think it's quite stark, the kind of class difference. I'll talk about that, but I think in terms of getting the opportunity, that there is no two ways. I really the Jesuits had to be thankful. Sister Monica, of course, from St. Anthony's, she in fact had spoken to Father Dennis Coelho, because I'd done the entrance and I got into Joseph's. I also got into Bishop's. I think we had done the entrance there as well, but he then said, okay, fine, you study, you don't have to pay your fees, and as long as you do well academically, things are going to be fine. And I think I did fairly well academically till 10th. So it was a complete free education, as they say, with free lunch. And he was quite strict. I think it's very interesting. I meet a lot of my classmates, the old boys from Joseph's. We play football together. And their view of Dennis Coelho is very different, very strict. That this definitely he was, but I saw him as somebody who really, provided an opportunity for some probably 5 to 6 kids like me, to be able to go through that as a teacher, working tuitions in the morning, tuitions in the evening. Very difficult, very tough, resilient woman, really to bring us up this way, provide us the kind of education. She used to keep saying, see, the only wealth I can give you all is an education. That's the only thing I can guarantee. After that, it's what you make of yourselves. So for me, I didn't care that he was strict. This is the only thing we had, that you either make it, and if you're not able to cut it out over there, then it's going to be a little bit difficult. So really, that strictness didn't. In fact, what really appealed to me, and I would say, a lot of my political awakening happened at that time. The class differences are right there. It stays in the face. It's from the shoe that you wear, whether you have a new pant, just every 3 years, and somebody else, your classmate will pants whenever they feel like. It's all of it. It's every single thing. The class, the way it works, it's something that you can't escape. Very much like if you're Dalit, I would imagine. So for me, that used to be like, really very difficult to deal with in school. Of course, I had friends, like Lawrence, etc., who come from more or less similar kind of background, but they were all very popular people, very good in your elocution, literary club. I used to be in chemistry club, for God's sake, who was going to be in chemistry club, except for, some of us. Everyone else wanted to be
described you as a little runt running around the football.
Yeah, that football used to be really important for me. Yeah, even then, I always loved the game. But see, Father Dennis Coelho did a very interesting thing. We'd have a morning thing, the prayer and all of that, and he'd talk to us. I remember he used to speak about everything. Politics. VP Singh, for instance, Mandela, and Mandal Commission, he spoke about that in the school assembly.
What is creamy layer in ice cream?
We knew about it then when we were in school because he spoke about it and he said that, see, you need to know. I think he had a sense, that things are changing very rapidly in the country. I'm talking about, late 80s. And so a lot of them were very concerned at that time. And I think it's also given that he's a Jesuit, they all definitely they don't look at their lives and their work divorced from the political situation where they're located. So he used to talk about it. I remember once when he was talking about VP Singh, he said, this prince among politicians. This is a line I think any Josephite from my batches will remember this thing. So he's someone I think who also started talking about a lot of this. We also had a very decent library. And I think I read about Che Guevara for the first time when I was probably in 8th. Yeah. And so for me, a lot of this, kind of the anger that you have at being poor it's a rage. And I used to feel it in a very big way. And so that rage can be very debilitating. I think it was maybe from 4th to 6th was when I think I went through my toughest time because I just went into Joseph's at 4th and then suddenly, like you initially go, you'll sit for lunch, you have one tiffin box with 2 chapatis and 1 fried egg. And somebody's brought some 2 big tiffin carriers of food for them for lunch, spread out on grass, and you have 2 maids sitting and serving them. And that also used to happen. So I think those first 3 years were horrible. But then I think, I kind of began understanding this and a lot of reading, finding out somebody like Che Guevara was such an important moment, that this is something that a lot of people are going through and that's something that you can deal with, that it's possible to be able to fight this. And it's not an individual problem, it's a systemic problem. There are structures that are creating this kinds of inequality. Because, obviously it couldn't be lack of hard work because I don't think anyone was working harder than my mom at that point. I think, which is why school in that sense, it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship. I'm not too nostalgic about school in that sense. But I think a lot of the things that I learned, a lot of people, like I remember there used to be this teacher called John Myers. Excellent man. I don't even know where he is. I think this must have been 8th and he was our English teacher. So you're Anglo-Indian, you can't pronounce H. I don't think if you're Anglo-Indian, there's a song that had come at that time, Hawa Hawa. Of course, I'm Anglo-Indian, so I'll say Hawa Hawa. So it became a big thing, and you have bullies in all classes. So obviously, there used to be a bunch of people who used to go at me. So this guy said something to me, and I just turned in class and I caught from my area. My instinct, oldest scholar, and this John Myers, he came, he saw me, he said, "You sit down," and then after class, he said, "I want you to come and talk to me after school." I went and spoke to him. He said, "See, I understand what's happening with you. I understand that you're feeling, that you're feeling targeted. You feel that, you may be out of place as well over here. But don't let anyone else decide for you how you have to be. You decide for yourself." And he was an Anglo-Indian himself. As an Anglo-Indian, for you to come into the school and to be able to reach till here itself is something, you have to go all the way now. Just focus on that. So it's such a small thing, maybe a 10-minute conversation, but a huge difference.
This Anglo-Indian stuff, I want to come to that. I want to open that a little bit. Not now, but since you brought up, I kind of teared up thinking of my teachers, Chakravarti sir, I know, he's my scouts master, one of the first lessons in secularism, and so we used to have this all faith prayer, in the scouts, this thing. So there was on Hamid, one guy, he would be made to do his prayer, then others, and all of that. So I don't know, just when you mentioned this, I just suddenly tickled of thinking about Chakravarti sir and the basic lessons that they instill in you. Clifton, there's one thing that connects an Ambrose Pinto, Coelho, Sister Monica, the fact that they were Jesuits. And I can't ignore the fact that the Jesuits are a very interesting subsection of the Catholic clergy and, their role in South America, for example. Do you want to make a passing reflection? Because you anyway brought up Che and all of this,
Sister Monica, she was from a different thing.
Okay, okay.
But I think, yeah, Jesuits have, in especially a place like Karnataka, Bangalore, where you have so many Jesuit institutions, and you see the kind of, their yeoman kind of contributions to education.
And what kind of education? Look at this. I mean, this is a great example.
No, not just. I was saying the other day I had gone to Father Stan Swami's his death anniversary. The evening college organized a talk, and they'd asked me to go there, and I gave a talk. I was so impressed with the bunch of students over there. Evening college, so obviously working kids, working class kids. You also have to work to support your families, and somehow you're trying to get an education. But such sharp students, so concerned about what's happening in society. And one of them asked me a very interesting question. He's saying, for us who come from this kind of a background where you really don't have anything to fall back on, there's no wealth, you don't even have your own house. How do we navigate something like this? And generally, one of them, priest was also, is telling them, no, you study, you have to do well academically as well, but you also have to be very concerned about society. I think, see, that's the kind of mix that I see what the Jesuits try and do. And definitely, it's something you cannot ignore, the kind of contributions they've made.
Do you see them as Marxists in some way? They've always, so the reason I'm asking this also is because, see, they've identified with a lot of Marxist struggles, land, atrocities. Stan Swami's work on police atrocities, excesses, and so many things he's done in the course of this.
Yeah, I would say, I think I won't be too fixated on, labels for everyone. I may want a label for myself, I may want to say that this is what I am. But I think what I'll identify with is, at the end of the day, there's somebody who are concerned about human suffering and how do you end that human suffering. And it's not just some kind of a theological kind of answer that they're trying to find. They're seeing also the material base on which, it's kind of operating, and how do you address that as well. So they are not like, there are so many other Christian institutions, educational institutions in the city, which are money-making machines. They are really, to a large extent, they are not in that business, as it were. And that's the difference that I see, that a lot of them, and I genuinely also have great respect for some of the, some of them, say, St. Joseph's College for Law, for instance, because I'm a lawyer, I definitely do have a relationship with that college. And I see that I see a lot of me in those classes. You can make out a kid who's, students who are not from particular backgrounds. And you see that mix is something that they're always ensuring. So you have children from, domestic workers, of Paurakarmikas who are studying in that college, and they say, no problem, if fees is not the issue, let them perform. That's all we want. So I think that continues.
And yet, we started off our commentary on these institutions by using that one word, saying elite institutions, right? And they've only become more and more elite. Joseph's has become a concrete monster. It has given up its playgrounds, it's given up everything. It's just starting these courses upon courses upon courses, and it's a mall of education as opposed to when Ambrose Pinto was there was still some, this thing of whether in terms of curriculum, the kind of courses they offered and all of that. But today, you see a lot of commercial kind of commercialization in many of these institutions.
Not fully. Joseph's, even boys.
Not Joseph's, but Joseph's, Christ. Many of these institutions, like Christ, for example, it's interesting. If you look at it, they call him the Blessed Chavara. Chavara is a social revolutionary in this thing. And look at Christ College today. It is, my goodness, it's as bad as any Agraharam that you can find in any, some of these godmen run institutions, right? So, just a comment passing.
I think, I just wrong with boys because you spoke about the school. Actually, interestingly, the construction that's at the ground is back. We are going to have our OBA over there. Also,
which Josephs are you talking about? I'm talking about the college.
No, I'm saying boys as well. I just want to tell you that they built recently, and the Old Boy Association did a tremendous contribution to it. So it's very interesting what a strong OBA the Josephs has. So a lot of the students who have passed away 30 years, 40 years, 50 years ago, they still have a relationship with the school. They still want to contribute. I think that is testament to how the school has actually touched people's lives. The second part, it's a very concerning development. I still think that the Jesuits are they try and ensure that they do a balance. And you can always, there are students from, say, some kind of oppressed sections or even economically backward sections who they are willing to accommodate. But I think the other colleges, that's just nowhere. And that's a larger trend in any way in terms of this commercialization of education.
It's deemed to be universities
Yes,
and all
yes.
of that.
Now it's just about, it's become so commercial now, the education sector. It's obviously a great worry.
Clifton, I want to look at this other foundational aspect of your life, this friendship, this fraternity that you found against all odds, right? There's a class barrier. In the case of Arvind, he's a person, from the LGBT community. These are all artificial barriers for friendships and fraternities to develop. And that's why I find it quite remarkable that these three friends came together in nursery, stuck together for years upon years, decades upon decades, and then you started ALF together. Comment on this thing. How does it happen? What were the highlights of this friendship? How do you reflect upon it?
Yeah, I mean, it's... I don't know, actually. I've really not thought about it. It's just something that happened, and then...
You've experienced it. We see it from outside. So we wonder, how do these three people come together?
I mean, we've obviously had our differences, fights, all of that. But somehow I think the value of the relationship, of that kind of a friendship it's really very difficult to say. It's also intellectual. It's not just, okay, we know each other for so long and I'm a good person, you're a good person. It's there's an intellectual basis to that. There's an emotional basis to that. There's a political phase to that. It's all of this, that really enables such kind of a friendship to last. Yeah. A little difficult to speak about.
You started work after you finished engineering.
Mm-hmm.
The IR segment. I do believe that we have to park the question of what's happening in Bihar, which is, I suppose, the epicenter of the ML party's activism. I think we'll have to just pick it up on another time, perhaps. For now, I just want to discuss the situation, the international situation, and as a Marxist-Leninist, how do you analyze certain things? And I want to start with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. And the reason I want to start with it is because Kavita had some very strong views on that matter. And I kind of kept scratching at that thing with, I don't know if you know, but I also interviewed D. Raja, the General Secretary of the CPI, the late Sitaram Yechuri. It was something that, it was a good interview, but, there were these rough edges because of the discussion around what the party position was on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And I remember in that interview, I brought up the CPIML position, which was actually quite interesting, because they are more, your party is more critical of the Russian position. But despite which Kavita quit, saying that, there is only that much that distancing can achieve. You have to build discourse around it and talk about what Putin's ambitions are. In fact, why Putin? She talks about how, there's this ideologue of Putin's, or rather his...
Dugin, Alexander Dugin.
Dugin, right? Dugin talks about Akhanda Bharat and Akhanda Russia in the same breath. And which leads Kavita to say that, in a sense, the USSR, apart from Russia, the Eastern Bloc, was basically a colony of the USSR, And unless you talk about this past, you can't talk about Putin today. You can't just say that this is wrong, that is wrong. You have to structurally oppose that entire thing. I've just given you enough provocations here to respond to. Let's talk about this.
I think we should talk about this, but we should definitely talk about Bihar, I think, before I leave. Because from an Indian point of view, political point of view, this is perhaps...
the reason I want to avoid Bihar is because... sorry, but the reason I want to avoid Bihar is obviously I'll have some things to interject. I might want to really...
we'll finish this and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Because I think it kind of it's an answer to the question that you're asking, that we definitely need to talk about what's happening in Russia and what position one is taking. But I think we should not get too carried away to only talk about that, and we need to also think about what's happening in our own backyard. And I think that's the point that we've been making. Now, as a Communist Party, we've taken a very clear position insofar as this entire the Russian aggression that's happened in Ukraine. Our stand is out there. We've said that Russia definitely needs to pull back. It cannot go ahead with this kind of expansion, this kind of project of his. And all the while saying that one has to also be very cautious of what NATO's intentions are. That's the general understanding that we have of what's happening over there. Now, beyond that, I always think, what is it, while you're obviously very concerned about what's happening around the world, and necessarily, say, for instance, Palestine, what's the entire genocide that's taking place over there. That's something that concerns you a lot. What's happening in Sudan, for instance. Obviously, that will concern you as well. So, it's very important, I think, for us to that we have positions on all of this, and obviously as a Communist Party we do. And if you look at, say, globally, the kind of rightward shift that's happening, this entire capitalism in crisis, the kind of policies that governments are coming up with, the kinds of regimes that you're seeing in country after country, it's a very, very worrisome kind of a scenario. And you locate what's happening in India in that particular context. So in terms of say some kind of a position on this, we've always had our positions on this, but I've always thought to myself, beyond a point, what is it that one can do, personally speaking, say on the Palestine question. For me, I'm saying that Russia and Ukraine still is fine. We'll come to that. Like, say, Gaza, there's a genocide happening there. It's a question that haunts me. How much can I say is enough that I've done? Okay, I'm doing something to contribute. I think there's no easy answer to that. There's no line that you can draw to say that, okay, if I do so much, I've done enough. And if I'm below this line, it's less. That line is going to be an arbitrary line. But I know that, say, I can, what I can do as a person who's in a political party, in a Communist Party, I'll be very clear on the positions that I'm holding on this. That's a position. You look at me and you know that this is the position that the person holds. This is the position that the party holds. That's one. And you try and do as many things that you can do to exercise, solidarity with the people over there, and to an extent to put pressure on your own government for the kind of stand it has to take. Now, I would look at even the Russia-Ukraine thing from the same point. What is it that one can do in terms of ensuring, that firstly, there is some kind of de-escalation. You really don't want this, boomeranging into some kind of a unmitigable kind of a war in which then everyone is going to prey on. You really don't want that. And you also want to ensure, that like we've been saying, this entire role that NATO has been, that the role of NATO itself in this region is something that you need to be concerned of. You cannot say that, I don't care what NATO does and it's fine. If NATO is supporting Ukraine, it's fine for me to say that, yeah, they're supporting and I have nothing to say about it. I think we have a position on that as well. And what in terms of, there needs to be some questioning on that front as well. So I feel that besides doing that, what more can you do? What is it that you want somebody to do in a situation like this? It's not possible to go fight that war over there. The best you can do then beyond that is to try and see whether you can push the Indian state or the Indian government at this point to somewhere see sense in the position that you are taking and some kind of alignment to happen over there. So that's broadly, I think, how I would at least understand that. As for Kavita, she's had differences and it's something that's out there. She's written a lot about it. We've chosen to say what we had to say about it, and that is also out there. But beyond that, I don't think it's anything personal in that sense. I think
she didn't. Yeah, she said so as well.
I also think, in terms of how you understand what the priorities ought to be for an organization at which point. Because I'm saying, I really want us to also get to this thing of we have to talk about what's happening in Bihar. We have to know how what is happening in Bihar is something that's, that's a danger for all of us all across this country. That's the reason I started with that.
No, fair enough. And I just wanted to avoid it because it's a rabbit hole and because there are things that I wanted to discuss, by way of like contradictions. Perhaps I might have somebody from your Bihar unit to do that. But can we talk about, I know you want to go, you are in a hurry to go. I'll let you go if you let me discuss one more section. And not a section, just a question. And if you agree that when you come back, you will take us to Nandan. Nandan is this historic football ground in Bangalore. And Clifton, if we don't highlight that place as Bangalore people who are not from Upper Palace Orchard or something. This is a part of Bangalore I think we know very intimately. And it's important to kind of memorialize these spaces, and because these spaces are vanishing. And I want to talk spaces itself in that context. Go there, talk about what spaces are vanishing in Bangalore. But can I ask a Karnataka question? This surrender of the Maoists, this encounter of Vikram Gowda that we saw, it's a very complicated few weeks and months in our political history. I would imagine. I mean, because not everybody was happy with the way the surrender itself happened. And here's the question that I wanted to kind of throw at you based on what I discussed with Shiv Sundar. Shiv Sundar said that strategically somebody surrendering is an honorable. There's no dishonor in surrendering. But to surrender and say that I have surrendered because of a change of heart, to say that the Siddaramaiah government is this, friend of the people in terms of like the people's struggle is happening inside Vedanta Sada thanks to Siddaramaiah. I mean, with due respect to him, I mean, he has his own struggles and contributions as an Ahinda leader. There are so many things, redeeming features about him. But to say, that from radical politics to kind of create this impression that somehow that this is an alternative, that we are going towards an alternative path. And that's, I suppose, what Shiv Sundar had a problem with, to the extent that almost kind of suggesting that Siddaramaiah is a new vanguard of the working classes. That was what a lot of people had a problem with in terms of how the surrender discussions were being had by people who were speaking on behalf of those who wanted to surrender. I'm stepping carefully here because I don't want to diss people here. Let's just talk isms and not people.
Yeah, no, see, Vikram Gowda's, it's a cold-blooded murder that has happened. Let us not,
we wrote about it. And yeah.
I don't think there's any other way you can put it. And perhaps it was a consequence of him not agreeing to this entire surrender that was being orchestrated. Now, insofar as the surrenders are concerned, I mean, see, my own... personally, I mean, I have, if you look at, say, the Maoist line, I don't agree with it. And there are ideological and political differences that have there. But I still, this, the way in which this thing happened, where you are reaching out, you're literally almost like coercing a section to leave something. I mean, the people who are doing it, I guess they are best, they best answer what their motivations were. But to try and say that what's happening in Karnataka is really excellent, I think we are going through a very difficult phase.
To the extent that it was said that Karnataka's surrender policy is a torchbearer in this entire conversation around,
I know. See, I'm just saying you're looking at, we're in the midst of this Operation Kagar that's happening in central India, where Adivasis have been just brutally murdered.
Seek and destroy.
Yeah. In the name of fighting Maoists. And there also Chhattisgarh has announced a surrender policy that, if there's also this Maoist Mukt Gaon, you'll get some 1 crore, you'll get this much, that much, this is what we give. They also have, and they also claim that that's a very, perfect kind of surrender policy. I have no problems, I mean, it's not my place in any way. People move on politically, and surely I've seen that in my own life. So you want to move on politically, that there is no problem. You want to leave the Maoists, there's no problem. I mean, it's perfectly your choice. And but you come out from there, and what you do is again your choice. Okay, that's at an individual level. But what we saw in Karnataka, I think, was a very different kind of a thing. I mean, talking about this government, I must say, we're part of the India Alliance. And the selection in Karnataka, we campaigned for the Congress in a very big way. And we did it with, the resources of our people's resources, which a lot of Congress people were quite stunned by the way. They'd be like, some, say, Kodugu, some comrades of ours were campaigning in some place with a jeep that gone, vote for the India Alliance camp.
Oh, Appana gang.
Not just Appana, just our tribal organization over there. So some of the Congress leaders, they saw this and they're like, who are these people?
Campaigning for us.
Yeah. So they thought, okay, we should offer you something. And I think they may have said something that they should not have said. So one of our comrades got very angry and she told that, see, she works on a coffee estate. She's a laborer. She said, we have taken 1 week off, all of us. And we have collected money, and this money is what we're using to do this campaign. How dare you come and say that you want to give us money? So you got damn, angry with them. So but why we did it? We did it because we definitely don't want BJP to come into power over here. Now, even at that point, we all know the problems that happen with the Congress government, and I think it's more stark than ever with the Congress government. The promises that they made in their own election manifesto have still not been materialized. There's some things that they've done. So there's guarantees they've done. So at least they've stuck to their word on that. Paurakarmikas, they promised that they will make them permanent. They've done that. But outside of that, the various laws, land laws and laws that pertain to farmers that they were supposed to, the anti-farmer laws that the BJP had brought in, with the Bombay government had brought in, they've still not withdrawn it. The anti-worker policies, they've still not withdrawn it. So these promises that they made, they've not acted upon. And I think it's a responsibility of parties like ours to, and we are doing that. We are saying that you have to be accountable. So when the Devanali struggle happened, it's a struggle which really, hats off to those farmers from those 13 villages to have stuck with this for the last 3 years, more than 3 years. Their battle against the Bombay government initially and then the Siddaramaiah government, and to have succeeded. It is on their strength or their strength alone that they have succeeded. All of us were there. We've been supporting in whatever way we can. But it's those farmers, their grit, their determination that has forced the Siddaramaiah government to give in. And at least that the Siddaramaiah government did. That, at least they listened to the people. I was there in the meeting with the Chief Minister when the Chief Minister finally announced that they're going to drop this. But there's so many things like this happening around the state, and so to then portray this as some kind of
alternative to armed struggle.
Yeah, it's an alternative, say, to the BJP, but that's not the alternative that the people want. What's the alternative? The people want, they want better lives. Farmers want better lives. Workers want better lives. The kind of caste discrimination that's still happening here. All of these issues are there. All of these issues have to be dealt with. If you look at the kind of communal situation, the free hand that even now communal groups have, the most recent, lynching of Ashraf in Mangalore. So the people want a different thing. This is not the people's alternative. This is an alternative only to the BJP as far as, things stand today. But we really need to work very hard. And I think this earth of Karnataka, it is ripe for, change. And culturally, historically, there's been that kind of, that if you look at the 12th century, Basavanna, you have all those examples, all those histories in this country. I feel that, that's really what all of us should be kind of focusing on, what's the kind of real alternative we can build for the people. And in that, I feel, when we're talking about fighting fascism, in the form of the RSS, BJP at the center, then what is the politics that you have at the state where there's a Congress government? There's always that confusion that people try to create. And I don't see any confusion in that. I think the fight against fascism is not necessarily an electoral battle. In elections, you can have certain tactics. And that, I think, is really not the be-all and end-all of our politics. Fighting fascism today means, you have a very strong movement against, say, caste. Like annihilation of caste has to be central to your project. This kind of communal polarization that's happened, you have to have, you have to fight that. Patriarchy, how do you ensure economic equality? All of this together, that is the battle against fascism. Battle against fascism is not going and voting against BJP. That's a very reductionist way of understanding the extent to which even fascist tendencies have percolated into an ordinary, the very common people. So I feel that, if we are focused on those struggles, if we are able to build those struggles in a place like Karnataka, we will actually be able to build a very good alternative, a people's alternative in this state.
In a place like Karnataka, Clifton, this last question, okay, then you should go. You have a struggle to fight. What is it that makes Karnataka unique, and how do I put it? Perhaps even immune to revolution. Because we saw some revolutionary movements across the south. You have the Kerala example, the Dravidian movement, the Telugu states had a very vibrant, very powerful people's struggle. Where did Karnataka lose out in this thing? Has it lost out at all? Because, of course, in one way, if you look at it, Karnataka has its cycles of change. I mean, when very profound changes have happened in the social spaces. I mean, for example, earlier we were talking about the non-Brahmin movement. People who were like Rai Bahadur or Katnarayan Swami, and all of these characters were here. Why did things like communism or like something like a Dravidian movement never happen here in such a big way?
I think, Karnataka has had its fair share of 12th century.
12th century, okay, but I'm saying the last century.
You look at last century, the biggest probably, the Dalit uprising, the DSS, the 70s, remarkable struggle, and the way in which it, brought the caste question to the fore. The Raita Sangha, that was another movement. If you look at trade unions, something that I've been talking to a few of our old trade unionists, and the kind of trade union activism, working class activism that happened in the 60s and 70s is remarkable. It's a history that actually should be written. There's a story of how the farmers had marched into Bangalore. I think this was after the firing. I'm not sure which year this is, but this is early 80s. And they used to have their protests apparently in Cubbon Park. And so the trade unions, they decided that as long as the farmers are here, we're going to feed them. So food was prepared like chapatis, and would be taken in hordes to this Cubbon Park to feed the farmers. It's anecdotal, but I'm saying that these are the kinds of
which are the characters were at that time
it's something you really need to get into. But I think this working class, this farmer worker solidarity, it's something that's been there for a while. Karnataka has seen that. But somewhere I think these histories are kind of, forgotten, or somewhere the trajectories have kind of changed. But I feel that over the past, I feel that things are definitely changing again for the good in Karnataka. So, for instance, when the Paura Karmika struggle, which we have a very big organization. We've been central in that struggle. It's very interesting. The entire movement was partly a Dalit organization, partly so-called. I mean, if you want to slot them, so it was the red and the blue that came together, which was an excellent kind of a struggle, and there was no difficulty in working together. Brilliant kind of a success that today, just in Bangalore.
So you have Saraswati Akka, you have you with the left
Mysore
formation.
Narayana, you have so many people.
Yeah.
Everyone is different. But on this issue, they all came together, united struggles were fought. Devanali again. It was again one where it was incredible, to see red, green and blue flags all flying together, saying that. So I feel, somewhere these things are happening. Now, how do you make it a unity that is natural? How does that unity be natural to the extent that it's able to trigger, the kind of social relations at the base that are necessary for it to sustain? It's one thing to say the leaders of these two groups, sit together and say, okay, we all need to come together. But the processes, the social processes at the base, where, you're seeing caste on a daily basis, you're fighting patriarchy on a daily basis, class differences. How do you actually trigger that? That I think is the challenge, but we really need to move in that direction. So this unity of all these struggling forces, that's something that I feel there is a very good possibility in Karnataka, and we should push for that. But there are also forces that are opportunists. There are forces that are trying to, divert this into the towards the Congress. That's always going to be there. You'll have to fight that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. While we continue exploring the ideas and ideologies that shape our world, scan the QR code to support What's Your Ism. Or you can contribute to the News Minutes Reporting Fund.